You're listening to the relaxing, soothing, and stress-free sounds of Sacramento Smooth Jazz.
Welcome back to Sacramento Smooth Jazz. This is Michael Andrews, and today I am thrilled. We have an amazing multi-instrumentalist joining us by phone today. He's not just a musical prodigy. I mean, he is just a master at a number of different instruments, and we're going to talk about it. And we're talking to him all the way from Auckland, New Zealand. We're going international now. Okay, this versatile artist is not just a smooth jazz guitarist or saxophonist or bass player. He's also an accomplished composer, arranger, producer, and engineer. We're going to talk about that. He's definitely pushing boundaries of smooth jazz by releasing tracks on all three lead instruments of that guitar, bass, and that sax. So today, we're going to dive into his journey and explore some things with him when it comes to how he expresses himself in his music. So please welcome the extraordinary Ryan La Valette right here on Sacramento Smooth Jazz. Ryan, how are you today?
I'm good, Michael. Thank you so much for having me on. It's going to be a lot of fun. Thank you again.
Oh, you're more than welcome. I'm thrilled that you are here with us today. So thank you. I know we've had to work out the time differential, but thank you so much. I just want to kind of get into this. I mean, you're a multi-instrumentalist. How did this begin? Did this start with one instrument and you decided to go on several others, or was this the plan from the very beginning? Talk to us about that.
Well, it's funny. It did start on one instrument. It was the guitar. That was the primary instrument that started, that was first. And then, that was where the love for music began, was around that instrument. Anything with strings, my parents would tell me as a toddler, hearing any stringed instrument, it really kind of drew me towards kind of the sound and everything else. So, I'm just grateful that they encouraged the whole thing. I think I was about 3 years old when my parents said they saw that I was extremely obsessed with music and people playing instruments and, of course, the guitar. So pretty much as soon as they could get me an instrument, they did. I've been doing it ever since, pretty much.
Amazing. Now, it's always a great thing when we have parents who are leading us in the right direction.
Yes.
So your parents putting instruments in your hand, but also, too, with respect to the instruments, your academic background is with the School of Audio Engineering there in Auckland. And so I'm curious, being a sound engineer and being masterful on those instruments, do you find that you're perhaps a little analytical as you're now listening to things a little more fine-tuned? I'm only assuming.
Maybe a little bit to my detriment, I would say at times. And it's funny how that whole thing began. I mean, my parents hugely encouraged music throughout my childhood, but as I'm sure you can understand, parents being a bit dubious about a child taking it on as a career. I mean, it's a crazy industry. A lot of things happen, a lot of things go on. My mum really wanted me to become like a traditional type of engineer, like a civil engineer or a mechanical engineer. That's what she wanted me to do. And of course, me being me, I rebelled completely against it. So she's like, well, son, you're going to become some sort of engineer. So why don't you become a sound engineer? So I took her up on it, and going to college to become a recording and mixing engineer was really the best thing that I did, because there's so many skills and other things that I developed that I apply to what I do now all the time. So it was fantastic.
Well, Mom got her way to some degree.
She did. Yeah, of course.
And it's perfect too, because with respect to the music, you want to be an engineer, be the sound engineer. And that's just great. I can only imagine your ability to be such a perfectionist now when it comes to your music. Do you find that you're spending a lot more time on each track, maybe more than you should? Yeah.
Yeah, I find you spend a lot of time, probably more than normal that you should on one track. But hey, I guess, your ears develop the way they do kind of in that sort of profession. It just, becomes something that you're kind of living with. But I mean, it's not normal. I should say it's not unusual for me I could be tracking one, guitar line that's 30 seconds long, and I could be easily doing 70 to 100 takes of that. And even though there's probably nothing wrong with it, just, you're going over it in your head, right? And you're saying, I can do a bit better. And then you get to a point where you have to draw the line, right? So I'm slowly getting better at doing that now. It's a work in progress.
Oh, good. Listen, I would say you're being normal. It's okay. Don't be too hard on yourself, but I can understand, your music is a testament to your ear as you're driving. You want perfection, and listening to your music, and on your latest project, you have 14 tracks in which you're expressing yourself. So I can only imagine how much time you're devoting to each of those tracks. Now, I was reading up on you, and I noticed that George Benson greatly influenced you. Talk to us about his style of play versus how you approached it and how you're doing it now.
So I first came across George and his music at the age of 5. That's when everything really kind of triggered and kind of went from there with music and his sound. My parents are not jazz fans. that they're big music enthusiasts. I mean, they love my music, of course. And through me getting into jazz, they've become more appreciative. My parents are kind of more into kind of classic rock and Motown and just lots of other really great music. But jazz was never really their forte. But the one jazz artist my parents really liked, and not for jazz, but for their success as a pop artist, was George Benson. So Dad had the Breezin' album in the house. Mum was doing some kind of spring cleaning one day on a Saturday, and she had the Breezin' album going. She had This Masquerade. That song completely changed my life. The intro to that track, and him, kind of the scat singing and playing the guitar lines. I said, I want to do that. And that was kind of the starting point. From that point, growing up and going to, Borders bookstore, and every time I got a bit of pocket change, I'd be going and buying every single George Benson record that I could get my hands on, and just kind of just emulated his sound pretty much throughout high school and everything else, until I got into college and I said, okay, this is going to be a problem if I sound exactly like George, because there's only one GB, right? So I kind of took the influence and everything that I kind of learned from emulating his sound and tried my best to create my own sound, which I think is pretty good at this point. Still developing it, of course, but just trying to get there and be unique and true to myself.
I'm listening to your latest project. I'd say you're on your way. And I'm noticing that you've worked with a number of us here in the United States. I mean, you have Nick Cole, Lynn Roundtree, Clay Benjamin. The list goes on. Chris Big Dog Davis. Yes. And that's going back even to your first project prior to this. I noticed on a couple of tracks from your previous work on your EP, which I think people need to listen to as well. There are a couple of tracks there that have vocals on it. Are you laying down vocals? Is that you?
Yeah, so there's one track on the Dimensions of Me EP, which I think is Forever in a Day. I wrote that track years ago, even before I recorded that project. But I got to a point where I wanted to lay it down, and that song was entirely me on vocals. And then, of course, there's some other tracks where I do kind of background stack vocals and stuff like that as well, which I'll probably be incorporating a bit more into my second project, which I'm kind of in the middle of working on at the moment. But yeah, so maybe one day I'll develop some more confidence to sing more live. But as a studio musician, I have been doing a lot of work along those lines, doing some vocal stacks and stuff like that here and there.
Yeah, because, as I was reading up on you, and I'm noticing, I said, he's a multi-instrumentalist. And then I was listening to your EP. I'm like, wait a minute, there's nothing written anywhere where he's a vocalist. What's going on here? I said, and so as I was listening to Forever in a Day, and I'm like, and then I heard, of course, Together Again with Andrea Lisa. And I was like, wait a minute, do I hear another vocal over here? I need to ask him about this. So I think our listeners need to know that you're going into that arena as well. So listeners, I'm speaking with international recording artist Ryan La Valette, and we're talking right now. He's joining us by phone all the way from Auckland, New Zealand, and he's just sharing with us some of his music. And he's a multi-instrumentalist and is absolutely amazing. Now we're just now talking about him being a vocalist as well, as he's kind of playing with that. I believe that, as you say, develop confidence. You were confident to put it on the track and release it.
Yeah, I guess you're right. Yeah.
I would say on your next track, perhaps consider that you should go that route and have a track or two with some of your own vocal. Just a thought.
For sure. Of course, that has very much been crossing my mind a lot recently, and wanting to kind of explore doing a bit more of that. And I guess, like they say, that the more you do of one thing, the better you get, right? So
yes,
it's just never going to hurt. That's for sure. Yeah.
Absolutely. Let's do this. We're going to sneak off for just a quick bit. I want to play one of your tracks from your latest album, and then we'll come right back. In fact, let's do this. Looking at your lineup here, we're going to play Highway 10 just randomly here, and we're going to come on back. I want people to get a feel as to what your music about before we come on back, okay?
All right. Sounds good, man. Thank you.
Awesome. This is Highway 10 from Ryan La Valette right here on Sacramento Smooth Jazz. We'll be right back after this. That's Highway 10 from Ryan La Valette here on Sacramento Smooth Jazz. We're speaking with him today, and he's talking with us all the way from Auckland, New Zealand. And we're just having a good time talking about him being a multi-instrumentalist and how he's going to perhaps put some vocals on this next project. Okay, so he has confidence, no doubt about it, right, Ryan? You have more confidence than you're saying. So
sure, man. Yeah.
So tell me something here. Highway 10. I just randomly chose that one because you have so many on here that are really good. Highway 10. Talk to us about that. Why? How did that arrangement come to be? And why the name Highway 10?
Right. We do have a Highway 10 in New Zealand. That is a proper highway that we have here. And it's funny. I would drive that. Well, I still do to this day. I drive through that highway a lot to get to a place in the far north of the country where my dad's from and to visit all my dad's family. It's kind of my place, like quick getaway go. So driving that road all the time, listening to music as you do. And as us artists are, we could be doing anything, throughout our day. And we have song ideas that come to us. And this particular idea came to me while I was driving, through Highway 10. It was a beautiful sunny day in summer, looking at the beautiful hills kind of rolling in the distance and the scenery. And this bass line popped into my head, and I kind of, pulled over to the side of the road and recorded it, and like kind of recorded it into my phone. Then once, the holiday was over and I got back home, I started recording this track, and this is what I came up with.
Nice. It's amazing the inspiration that we get from everyday living. And when you're putting it, and when you lay it out musically, it's even just so much more beautiful, especially how you're doing it. Now, I can't help but think, you being an amazing musician, there are perhaps some listeners right now who are aspiring to be a musician, and they're just kind of making their way. They're young, whatever the case may be, whatever age group they're in. But the fact that you're a multi-instrumentalist, talk to our listeners about what it takes to do that. Are you mastering one at a time, or are you just that much of a prodigy, man, where you just get it each time? I mean, what does it take?
Well, for me, my personal experience was, music has always been, I'm very fortunate. It was a very, very natural thing for me. It did not take me long, to develop skill on any of the instruments that I play, of course. I remember, and of course, and I'm saying this in respect to, there are lots of other artists out there who I think are way more talented than me. I think I've really worked really, really hard at it and got lucky. But so with a side note to that, I think, for me, what I did was I spent most of the time on the guitar. So that was for years and years and years. And I think I got to high school when I picked up the saxophone, and I actually did not enjoy it in the beginning. It wasn't a lot of fun. I didn't get on with my saxophone teacher that well, just for whatever reason, we just didn't kind of click. So I played the saxophone for 2 years, first 2 years of high school, then I quit for several years. And then when I started college, got a part-time job while I was studying, and I saved up my pennies and bought my own saxophone and started to teach myself. And
wow.
Yes.
Self-taught.
Yeah, absolutely. So really what I learned from my teacher at that time, and all due respect to the guy, it was basically to start all over again, really. So just, kind of listening to records. I was kind of always very old school the way that I would learn things. I would always listen to the CDs and do things by ear. That's how I would do things, as opposed to going on YouTube, which is a great resource that you have now. But I've always liked doing it kind of the hard way, as crazy as that may sound. And then from that point, following the saxophone, the bass was only really the last. I think I'd only been playing the bass a year when I did the new Dimensions of Me EP. It's not that long ago I started playing bass. It was very recent times.
Okay. Wow. So basically it's layered, of course. You're taking one step at a time. You're not rushing into it. And I think that's a lesson that a lot of us need to understand, that we're not rushing into this thing. You're taking your time, and you're mastering it, you're understanding it, and then you're moving on to the next. You're just layering it. And I think that's beautiful. And that's, in this day and age, everybody wants this microwave results, and it doesn't work that way for effectiveness.
No, it really does not. No matter how much talent you may have, you still have to put in the work, right? So I think that goes with anything you choose to pursue in this life. But for me, the main reason I really took on learning more instruments was out of necessity. I mean, like in college when I was working on my very, very first project, I mean, when you're a student, I was working, but I didn't have much money at all. It was just enough money to pay, bills like insurance and phone bill and all the rest of that kind of stuff. So it was out of necessity, where I couldn't afford to pay other musicians to be on the project. So I had to learn how to play the instruments myself or program the drums myself. And that's kind of where that sort of began with other things like that. And it has really helped towards, my producing career, that's for sure.
Okay. So out of necessity, you found a way to make some things happen. You're not into allowing excuses to get in your way.
Absolutely.
Point blank.
Of course.
Yeah, awesome. I like to extrapolate life lessons out of conversations. And these are life lessons that a lot of us have learned and even still learning to some degree. Now, with respect to the smooth jazz genre, being in New Zealand, you have an option of various types of music. Why smooth jazz for you?
Well, it started with traditional jazz first. I'm more or less a bebopper. That's kind of where things started with me getting into jazz and just the smooth jazz. I think that just kind of the contemporary rhythms and like the contemporary feel that goes behind jazz, jazz chord progressions and stuff. I was really drawn towards that sound, and of course drawn to it enough to where I wanted, to pursue a career in it. So I absolutely love the genre for that.
And George Benson, of course, being that example early on, kind of helped you along that path as well.
Exactly. Him and Grover Washington Jr. and some other artists of that generation who were kind of the pioneers of that sound, I would say, back in kind of the mid-70s. And of course, it turned it into what it's become today.
Now, let me ask you this. How do you connect with the listeners overall? Is there a personal way you connect? Do you want people to hear what you're saying, your message? What's your method of connecting with listeners on a personal level when it comes to your music?
Well, of course, the social media platforms, number one, of course, the Facebook and Instagram. I think that's where most of the fans in this genre kind of live. And, just whether it's, putting up a video from time to time of, playing one of my instruments or, just kind of spreading the love that way and just kind of knowing that you've made someone's day a lot better is a really nice thing. So I think just kind of connecting through music, whether they see you on video, whether you're putting something up of yours, you're kind of sharing some music, maybe a Spotify link or something else like that along those lines.
And how can our listeners connect with you?
Cool. So Ryan La Valette Music on Instagram. So that's at Ryan La Valette Music. You'll find me there. And then, of course, Ryan La Valette Music as well on Facebook.
Nice. So those two right there. Now, you mentioned YouTube earlier. Do you have a channel or is that something that you just do casually?
It is a casual thing. I probably, as time progresses and things kind of tick along, I will put a lot more effort into kind of the more performances I do. And the more footage that I can get, especially out in the States. So when I'll start to kind of build that channel and grow things from there. But it's cool, you have fans that, will be at your show and they're recording things on their phone and they'll upload it. It's funny. You see things like that all the time.
Yes, you do. Now, since you mentioned the States, any plans on doing a little tour or, coming out to the States to do some things? I know you're working on a project right now. Would that be an opportunity for you to maybe promote that project here in the States?
For sure, there are quite a few things in the works for 2024 to be in the States. Can't disclose on everything yet, but we've got some very, very positive things happening where I will most definitely be over there.
Nice. Well, we're going to definitely keep tabs on you for that. That's for sure. So rest assured on that. Let's do this. As we close, I want people to hear another one of your tracks, but I want you to introduce the track. Give us some background on it, what inspired you. I want just whatever information you want to give on the track. Let our listeners know what's going on with you with this one.
This would be my personal favorite off of the latest project, New Beginnings. This song is entitled Lover's Melody, featuring my really, really good friend, Nicholas Cole. I'm really big into the slow jams kind of vibe. Love that kind of music. I wanted to incorporate the quiet storm feel with the smooth jazz feel, and that's what I came up with. The song was a huge success. It was a massive hit earlier this year. So guys, this is Lover's Melody featuring Nicholas Cole on Sacramento Smooth Jazz.
Thank you so much for joining us today, Ryan. I really appreciate it.
Cool. Thank you so much for having me, Michael.
Thanks for listening to Sacramento Smooth Jazz. To continue listening to Smooth Jazz 24/7, follow Sac Smooth Jazz on social media and listen by going to sacsmoothjazz.fm.